spoken, please ensure to mute your mic again so the audio remains clear. And when members and officers do wish to speak, you can either use the hand up feature or by attracting my attention on the screen. When I do bring you in, please unmute your mic and say your name, then allow a brief pause while we ensure you are visible on screen. Once you have spoken, please make sure to lower your hand also. Are there any apologies to report?
None received directly to committees, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Oh.
We're all profoundly bored.
Pardon? I can't go on, right. Are there any declarations of interest? We'll go on to review of political proportions and allocation of seats 2020 to 2021. Can I refer members to pages 1 to 10 of the supplementary agenda, setting out the outcome of a review of political proportions and the associated allocation of seats following a number of changes to the political composition of the City Council. Chris or Mike, would you like to introduce the report?
Thanks, Chair. As members will be familiar, whenever there's a change or rather a substantive change in the political composition of the City Council, then that requires us to conduct a review in terms of the composition of council as well as how the proportions and entitlement to seats on various committees are allocated. There's two different strands to that approach, and those of you who are long-standing members will be very familiar with the various reports to annual council meetings. Essentially, you see committees which are classed as proportionate, allocated on a basis of a percentage calculation reflecting the number of members for which each political group has a membership of council. There are equally a number of committees for which full council unanimously has chosen in the past to resolve to set aside proportionality rules so as to ensure representation from all political groups. Now, in this instance, there's a series of changes outlined within the report in responses to a reduction in the number of councillors of the largest group, which is the Labour group. The actual changes and reduction in seats affect committees which full council has previously determined to allocate under the proportionality rules. What that means is because the seats currently lie vacant pending by-elections or otherwise up until the May local elections, this therefore means that those can't, under proportionality rules, be assigned to another political group. It's therefore a matter for yourselves as members, either at this committee or subsequently at full council, as to whether or not you consider it appropriate to suspend proportionality rules for the 4 committees to which the changes affect, so as to enable those seats to be allocated. And there'll be 2 options if members choose to suspend proportionality rules. That'll be an allocation potentially offering those seats to the independent councillors, or if the independent councillors then chose not to take up those seats, then those could be offered and distributed on the remaining political groups were members to be so minded. I think it's important to be clear the reason why the report doesn't actually immediately recommend offering the seats to the independent councillors. Each independent councillor sits in their own right and individual capacity. Under the regulations which govern the allocation of seats and proportions, we're dealing with political groups which are registered, which are typically at least 2 members or more and have completed the relevant declaration. So as it stands, we're unable under the regulations to directly allocate to the independent councillors unless there is a resolution of full council to suspend proportionality rules. And for purposes of clarity, whilst council has done that at previous recent AGMs, it does require that resolution to be unanimous with no dissenting councillors. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Radford wishes to speak. Before we hear from Councillor Radford, is there anybody else? Because I can't see anybody indicating at the moment. No. Okay. Steve?
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of principle I've always held. We are supposed to believe in equal rights. Equal rights means proportional opportunities. And the fact the legislation doesn't represent independent councillors, I don't think should make any material. We should do the right thing, even though the legislation is adequate. So I would always argue, and I've always argued, irrespective of who it is, doesn't matter who it is, every councillor should have an equal opportunity to be represented on committees. And if that means we have to suspend standing orders, we should do so. The second point is, and I'm not saying I'm going to the Labour group, it's an unusual scenario. We have a larger number of vacancies than we would normally do because of the protracted postponement of local elections. It does strike me there doesn't seem any logic in having committee places vacant when they could be shared proportionally amongst the parties who are sitting as serving councillors. So I've asked Mike to draw some words up to reflect that. I think we should stick to the better practice, not the legal minimum, and give all the councils seats proportionately to the vacancies and redistribute them rather than have independent members precluded. I don't know what the status of the independent members are. I believe one of them is independent because of allegations. I have no way to determine those allegations, and nor should it affect their right to represent on the basis of allegations, as far as I'm concerned, at this date are not proven. I'll also be concerned that we seem to have an inconsistency. There are some members who have been through investigation procedures of the council, which are still outstanding for 3 months, where there's no conclusion. They're represented on committees and spokesmanship, the person involved, and I'm not mentioning the name because it'd be improper to. But then there's a double standard for someone who's accused without investigation. So I know the officers have got to stick to the legal rules and put it to us, but I think we should go above the legal minimum and we should enhance and protect the right of independent members. That's my view. I think those members on this committee will know it has always been my view, irrespective of the individual circumstances.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? No, I'm not seeing any indication. Chris and Mike, do you have any further comments?
Chair, just one comment I'll make. Yeah. Obviously, it's a matter for the council what way you want to allocate seats, but in terms of members putting items on agendas, any member of the council can put an item on any select committee. That's scenarios. They don't have to be a member of the committee or be able to vote. They can still have an item discussed. I think just might be part of your considerations as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any further indication that anybody wishes to speak. Can I move that the report be submitted to council for approval? Is that agreed?
No, Chairman. I'd like to. Mike's drafted the words which reflect my sentiments about the independent members being represented. Whether people are committees or not, or put a motion to committee, everyone knows there's a distinct difference than being a member and not being members. So, Mike, do you want to read the words we've drafted? And I'll move that formally, if I may.
One moment, please, Councillor Radford. I'll just check the record for you.
Thanks, Mike. Oh.
Reflecting the comments made by Councillor Radford, I believe Councillor Radford is intending to move both here and to Budget Council next week the following. Noting the content of the report, which details the full application and impact of relevant regulations governing political proportions and the allocation of seats, this committee and subsequently council considers that, in the interest of ensuring the widest possible representation on committees, that political proportionality rules be suspended in respect of those committees listed within the report where a vacancy exists, with such vacancies to then be offered in the first instance to those councillors who are independent, and for those seats not then taken up by independent councillors, to these then be offered to each of the political groups in turn, such as to enable all vacant seats to be filled.
Thank you very much, Mike. Very grateful.
Is there anybody seconding Councillor Radford's motion there? No, so we don't have a seconder. Okay, so can I move then that the report be submitted to council for approval? Is that agreed?
Agreed. Not agreed, opposed.
Opposed.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. Would you like your dissent recording by name?
Yes, I oppose the Commissar's regulations.
Thank you, Councillor Radford.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Radford dissenting, everybody else is for. Can I ask if members wish to raise any specific constitutional issues? And I will ask officers to respond to any matters raised. Anybody?
Chairman?
Yeah. Right, 1 minute, Councillor Radford, go on.
I don't want to name the person because I think that would prejudice the debate, but I'm really concerned we have all these protocols in practice. I understand a member of the public has raised a complaint against a senior councillor. That has now been withstanding for a report for 3 months. What's the point of having all these constitutional niceties if we don't have the political resolve to follow them through? And I've been in correspondence on the gent's behalf without any prejudice for or against the case with the city solicitor. And I'm appalled that after an independent panel's report's been compiled, it still hasn't come to a hearing 3 months down the line. What is the point of having all these constitutional niceties if we don't have the resolve to implement them?
Councillor Radford, I also have knowledge of what you're referring to, and again, without prejudice in any inquiry, I'm aware that the city solicitor is arranging a panel to hear that, and we're waiting for a date.
But I believe that's been the case for 3 months. How long does it take to arrange a panel?
It's something that I've chased up with the city solicitor today. I don't think it's taken that length of time to set up the panel.
No, I think you're wrong, madam. I think you're wrong, madam, because in fact, the hearing investigation report was compiled in October. The gentleman, Paul, has been promised hearings consistently for 3 months. That's November, December and January and now February. So actually, I'm wrong. 4 months.
Well, my interpretation is different. But I've chased the city solicitor today.
I'd like to see evidence of that rather than go on assurances.
Okay. I've chased the city solicitor today and will continue to do so.
Absolutely.
Chair, I'll come back to Steve on that. I'll come back to directly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any other members that wish to raise any other further issues?
No, thank you.
Just one practical thing, if that's okay, Ruth.
Yes.
Obviously, we had the mayor and leaders meeting, Steve, on Friday, just about the arrangements for the budget council, in terms of it being, a lengthy meeting. As you know, we have to do card votes when it's the budget, so that will put some extra time factors in. If the groups can just indicate, the list of speakers, so we can do what we did last time and get like a comprehensive note of, of who wishes to speak. If we can have that by tomorrow. And also, thanks to yourself, Ruth, Steve and others who give us the list of older men and women to go forward. So there might be some additional paperwork coming out tomorrow night. So members just keep an eye on for that, which will be hung on this item on constitutional issues. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Radford.
Can I thank Chris for their support? If you haven't seen the note, I've withdrawn one nomination with the clarification of political involvement would be still the case, Chris. So that's in. We are still waiting for a reply from the Director of Finance as to whether we would have an amendment to move. So I'm in a bit of the difficulty of submitting speakers without knowing whether our amendment's going to be accepted or not. So that's my difficulty.
I'll try and get Mel to get back to you by tonight, Steve.
Yeah.
I'll speak to you in a minute.
Thanks very much, Chris.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Just like to thank everyone for participating, and that concludes this meeting.